Welcome to the Villages Democratic Club. We've got some guests with us today from the African American Club. We continually reach out to clubs that are like us that have the same common goals. So thanks for joining. Our speaker today is Ms. Beverly Steele from Royal. And let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next slide, Rick. Let's have a moment of silence. Yesterday was Veterans Day. I know Memorial Day is for fallen veterans, but just a moment of silence for everything. We won't need. I thought I was going to say a moment of silence for democracy, but we did. Okay, next slide, Rick, please. What's on your screen is from Ms. Demings. And things didn't go the way that we had hoped down in Florida, but things are progressing pretty well across the country for Democrats. So I think it's a positive message, maybe with a lesson her mother told her, no matter the obstacle ahead, never tired of doing what's right. And her comment is that we'll build a better America. And, you know, it's one step at a time. Everything doesn't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight, but it was a positive step forward. Next slide, Rick. Our speaker today is Ms. Beverly Steele from Royal. Anyway, it looks like Ms. Steele has arrived. So anyway, while she's getting situated, I don't want to take any of her thunder, but Ms. Steele is from Royal. She grew up there. She went to Wildwood High School, and she moved away for a while, and she came back in, I believe, 1982 or 1984, and she's been here ever since. So when Ms. Steele is ready, we will get her up here, and she is the guest of honor today.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. I'm glad you didn't read that introduction that you sent out to introduce me by, because I always could get up with a disclaimer behind it, so I don't have to do that this morning. It is so good to be here, and trust me, I don't take this lightly. I came right in, and I knew that because when I left home, before I left home, I put the phone on the charger. And you guys know what that means, right? That means I walked right out of the house, I put it on the charger, down the street, and turn around and go back to get the phone off the charger, then come back out. And also, I have something in my house, someone in my house that you probably don't. I have a 100-year-old mom. Who will be 101 December 5th. Wow. I am ecstatic to tell you that. I am overjoyed to tell you that, because I do not know many people in this world, whether they're my age, younger or older, that can say that. And on top of it, she's home with us, and she tells us what to do. Okay? The Bible says you have a couple of lives. You have a childhood life, and then you have an adult life, and then you have another childhood life. Well, let me warn you, the second childhood is not like the first one. You cannot put them in timeout. Okay? You cannot do that. So when they speak and they want something, you cannot say, go over in the corner and wait till I get there. No, that doesn't work at that second childhood, all right? But I am so happy to be here this morning to talk to you about the community of Royal. Some of you, I see some familiar faces. So I know some of you have been out before and have heard the story before. Some of you are new to it. Maybe because you read all of the articles that were talking about the Florida Department of Transportation, and they wanted to extend the turnpike, and it was coming right through our community. No, it wasn't coming right through our community. That's a nice way of putting it. It was actually going to just take us away, destroy our community. It would have taken out my center. It would have taken out 2 churches. It would have taken out most of the homes in the community. Or we would have had to live with, as one of our commissioners said, who knows? They may just put a nice flyover. Well, would you like to be under a flyover where there are diesel trucks going 90 miles per hour flying over your head or near your home? So, no, it wouldn't have hurt us. It would have destroyed the community. We would have eaten ourselves up. In other words, my people would have been forced to sell their property, eminent domain, for it to be built, number one. And the ones of us that did not do that, eventually we would have had to sell the property because of the quality of life would have diminished. So we would have been forced to eat ourselves up. So that wasn't the only threat. Once that threat came through, we were able to work with DOT, talk with them, met with them, and actually Jared Perdue, who is the Secretary of the Florida Department of Transportation, the top man, met us in Ocoee on August the 29th, called us on August 29th and met us on September the 3rd to tell us that the routes did not work for them anymore. And they went back to the drawing board. So I can stand here and say to you that through all of this, DOT and their people were willing to sit and talk with us. And when they began to talk with us is when we were able to present our side of the story. And our side of the story is very unique. Our side of the story is that Royal was formed in 1865. And the uniqueness about Royal is that in 1865, if you can remember, at the end of the Civil War, some of my people had already joined the war because they realized that they had a certain amount of freedom. Number one, Massa, the boys, the field manager, so forth and so on, had left the plantation to make up the army to fight. So they realized that there was no one there now to tell us what to do. They had another mission. On top of that, they realized that as the others came in, they weren't fighting them. Now, did they know what the war was about? Probably not. Did they think the war was to free them? Probably not, because that wasn't what it was about. But they did realize one thing. We have a certain amount of freedom now. So they joined Sherman, the one that they saw that was fighting against what was enslaving them. And at the end of the war, they said to Sherman, what do we do now? They didn't own anything. They didn't have anything. Even the plantation they came from may have been burned, didn't exist anymore. So they said, what do we do now? So General Sherman said, I have the authority as the general to do a special field order. And he did special field order number 15, which will grant you 40 acres as a homesteader per family. And you can take one of the mules, because we don't need them anymore. The war is over. So not everyone got a mule. I used to get that question at these sessions. No, not everyone got a mule. But it became known as the 40 acres and a mule special field order number 15, put in by General Sherman. Now, you know the story. 6 months later, President Lincoln was assassinated. Then President Johnson, Vice President Johnson became president. And at that time, I don't know if you know this, but at that time, the Vice President was elected, just like the President. Lincoln, Republican, had a Democratic Vice President, Johnson. Do you think that'll work today? That's another subject. Let's not go there. Ponder on it though, but don't know something. But anyway, Johnson was from the South, a Democrat. So when he came in, he had a plan of reconstruction. Well, it didn't fit so well with General Sherman, who, let me see if any Civil War guys in here? I have to check because they came to do my tour at the center, and I said, and Sherman won the war. And one of them said, Sherman didn't win the war. I said, okay, what would you say? He said, he may have led the victory. So now, from now on, I said, Sherman led the victory. I learned from you, just like you learned from me. Well, Sherman said he had a plan. Well, the whole gist of the thing is that Sherman and President Johnson did not see eye to eye. They were like oil and water. If Sherman said it, Johnson said the opposite. If Johnson said this, Sherman said that. Well, guess who had the most power? President Johnson, you're absolutely right. And guess what? General Sherman learned that. Because he almost stripped him almost all his medals before he died. And anything that Sherman signed off on, he rescinded, including Special Field Order number 15, which gave my people their property. And then he encouraged his people, remember he was from the South, to go back and reclaim your land. So at that point was when my people became sharecroppers, okay? But now move to Florida and Royal. Florida was Spanish, remember? It didn't go into the Union until 1818, 1819, 1820, up in there. So it's very hard to find plantations. Actually, my historian told me that you can't find any plantations before that time in Florida. Okay, because that's when Florida. The Spaniards were more interested in not what the financial market would be, but what religion the country would serve, okay? So they never joined, Florida never got into the slave market. Now I know you see all of the stories, and I've read them myself, with the Spaniards, with the African American guys, or were they guys or were they slaves? I don't know, but I do know one thing, is that they were told in the southern states where the plantations were, where they were enslaved, that if you can walk into Florida, join the Spaniards, help fight the Indians, become Catholic, you were free. Okay? Well, my people know the Bible. The Bible says to be free is to be free indeed. So when they came over, they said, I can join the Indians, fight the Spaniards, and not become Catholic. That's where we're going. So they did. And the ones that did that became known as Black Seminoles. They did not mix blood. They lived under the rule of the Indians, but they did not mix blood. They did not marry white, they did not marry Spanish, they did not marry Indian, they did not mix blood. They are known as Black Seminoles. Write that term down, Google it. You will see a lot of information out here by Dr. Rosalind Davidson. We worked with her before. She's a noted historian about Black Seminoles. Well, moving into Florida, into Royal. What happened is that my story begins with how my aunt tells it from my grandmother. And she said it started 1865. Well, we've always had white families around the border of our community. And one of them wrote their family history and insisted that I put one of their family history books in my historical center. That was a pondering for me, okay? But anyway, he gave us the book, and I looked at it because when you come to the center, if you move one item, I know you moved it. Because unfortunately, it's not a really pretty story, but unfortunately, I'm the one that probably placed it there. So if you move one item, even a pencil sometimes, my staff used to say, how do you know I moved that pen? But anyway, his book came in, and I looked at it, pondered it. I didn't take it to the center because I needed to know, number one, what was the significance to our history, number two, where to place it, so forth and so on. So I had it for about a month before I could hear my grandmother in my ear telling me, Beverly, I taught you manners. Mr. Nichols gave you one of his books. She knew the Nichols family. And you haven't taken it to, and I'm like, Grandma, get out of my ear because I have so many things to put in that center that really relates to us, but I can't figure out the Nichols. She said, I taught you manners. So pick up the book. So I picked up the book and I'm flipping through, and sure enough, there was a whole chapter on Reverend Matthew Beard, who is buried in our cemetery. He preached the Sunday before he died, and he died at 115 years young. There was a story on Mr. George Wyman. I said, Mr. George? I know Mr. George. And there he was. He was married to Mother Polly Wyman. He died young. He was 80-some years when he died. But Mother Polly Wyman lived to be 109 years young, and she's buried in our cemetery. Okay? So I'm looking at this and like, oh my God, and there's Royal all over, and then boom, there was a section on Royal. And his story began in that section that when his people came into the area in 1848, 1849, long before the Civil War, they came upon a group of freed Africans who did not mix blood, who did not intermarry, who was already settled in the area, who were kings and queens, captured by their own people in Africa, sold into slavery, sent here to America, and they had already named the place because their intention was to eventually go back and claim their space in Africa. So they named it Royalsville, so that future generations would know that they came from royalty. Later it became quietly known as Pickettsville, where my aunt picked up the story in 1865, because they built picket-type fence to say, this is my 40, that is your 40, that's my 80, that's my 120, was why it was called Pickettsville, and later became known as Royal. So 1848-49, there they were. Freed Africans that did not mix blood, Black Seminoles. Now we haven't proven that point yet. That's some work that we have to do. But one of the largest Black Seminole tribes in Florida was in a place called Okahunkka, Lake County. Well, I don't know if you know Sumter County history, but Lake County was a part of Sumter County. Lake broke off from Sumter, and right at Okahunkka is where the lines separated. So the largest Black Seminole tribe was in Sumter County before Lake took over Okahunkka. Our first church and school was built in the community in 1874 by Reverend Alfred Brown. Reverend Alfred Brown people and descendants live in Okahunkka. Always try to make a connection. There was the connection. So there's a rich, rich history in Royal. So I'm looking at you right now. I'm looking at your eyes, is how you're looking at me. Just imagine Mr. Jared Perdue listening to Beverly Steele tell him this story, and you want to run a turnpike extension through our community? No, I don't think so. Okay? But anyway, that's the shortness of the history of Royal. That brings you up to why we're so unique. And what makes us so unique is those 40 acres I talked about, we still hold them today. We still hold them today. There are not many African Americans in this country that I have met, and I have lived in New York City, I have lived in Chicago, I have lived in Los Angeles, I have been to Portland, Oregon, I have been all over this country and have not met many African Americans who can say that they came from ownership. That's my age. Ones that are younger, but my age. In other words, I was reared in Florida, in Royal. We own the land. I see all the articles now because the turnpike brought one threat, but it also brought several other threats with it. So I'm reading all the articles and the comments that people are putting, and they're talking about Royal and my people like we are ones that just came in, found some buildings, found some homes, and rented them. Like you would find in Tampa, where you would find the areas where the Chitlin Circuit. Not many owned the places they lived in. They rented them, even if it was a house. And then it became known as their neighborhood. So when the city of Tampa decided to gentrify, they went in and they said to the owners of the property, and the owners said, I'm willing to sell. So then the whole neighborhood disappeared. But that's not Royal. We're owners. We're property owners. So I read all the articles and it says, we want property owners to have their rights. And I'm thinking, well, that's us. What happened? Okay? Now let me tell you one thing. We had land. My 444 fathers and 444 mothers had land. They had no money. They had land. They had no power. So for me to stand here today and share this story with you, and to tell you that I can walk on the same land that they walk in their work boots, in leather printed boots, is more than just sharing a story with you, to me. It is more than just working crazily, learning more than I ever wanted to learn about how FDOT operates, about comprehensive plan amendments, about rezoning process, about historic preservation. It's more than that. I can feel my grandmother standing right here. I can feel my great-grandmother standing right here. I can feel my great-great-grandmother standing right here. I can feel my girlfriend, who I lost when she was a couple of years older than I, standing right in front of me, saying, go forth, go forth. They may whip you, but in the end, turn around and show your whip marks on your back proudly. But go forth. Do what you can to save the land that the people, my people, didn't fight to hold. Because when you come into Royal today, it's beautiful. You see the fields. There are not many homes because we have 40 acres. So we may have 5 family members, and on the 40 acres there may be 5 acres where someone have a home, but the other 35 is the field behind us. But don't think that we do not have plans for our own land. Don't think that we're just going to lay down and do like one of the comments in the paper. Bulldoze over it and bulldoze over any of them that stand in the way. That was the comment. National Historic Registry nomination for the Rural Historic District of Royal, being fought like fire. Now our county is saying, well, we want to give property owners the right to say what they want to do with their property, whether they want to be included in a historic district or not. But guess what? You're in a historic district. There's no not to that. Never thought I would stand here and say to anyone that I am in a lawsuit with Sumter County government because they approved to drop 532 homes in the historic district of Royal. with the gate of those homes facing the gate to my community cemetery. So it brought a lot of threats. We have 400 acres being changed from agricultural to industrial right in our community. So now you want to make us eat ourselves inside out. You need a new industrial park, so you're going to come to Royal. And will we live there if it happens? We are looking at our quality of life just like everyone else. So we'll probably eat ourselves inside out. But if we have to, I told my 100-year-old mom, I said, Mom, if we have to move, I promise you this, I will do everything in my power to not make that happen. Years. There's an old oak tree. I can look out across my yard that's gracefully dying. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And she looks out and she sees that tree and she said, "You've served us well. I remember playing under you as a child." So ladies and gentlemen, Royal. As a matter of fact, the nomination was slated to go before the state board on Thursday. You feel me already, right? You do feel me, right? And when the storm was coming through, absolutely, at 1:30. At first, they canceled the in-person meeting, which we were going to be there, and said we're just going to do it over the internet. So now they called on Wednesday, late Wednesday afternoon, and canceled the entire meeting. But anyway, it's a state meeting, so what does that mean? They have to put out a 30-day notice before they can have another meeting, so it won't be within the next 30 days. And then he has to poll his board members to see when their availability is. So it may not be for another 60 days, we don't know. But the good news is that it gives you an opportunity to write some letters of support for our nomination and email them to me, and I will get them to the powers to be at the state. And it'll just be on top of all the ones that we've already received. Can I have the video, please? The one thing I want you to remember is that this is not about the land. This is not about the history. The uniqueness of this community is about the people that held on to the land. It's about my mom, who, at the time when she was about to give birth to me, my grandfather had just purchased the first insurance that an African American could purchase. Probably for like 5 cents a week or something like that. And he wanted to make sure that the insurance worked. So my mom took a trip all the way to Tampa to give birth to me. And when she got to the doctor, said to her, "You're not ready." They turned around and brought her back to Royal. I-75 wasn't there at that time. It was a bumpy ride, my mom said. And of course, when they got her back to Royal, she was ready. They had to turn around and bump her back to Tampa. And there I became. Why did she have to go to Tampa? The insurance that he purchased was called the Lily White Insurance. The closest Lily White hospital was in Tampa. But the goodness of the story is, my mom did that. She could have told my grandfather, Daddy, I won't go back. Just call the midwife and have the midwife to catch my baby. But she did that because my grandfather owned that insurance. Mr. Sutton James brought that insurance. Mr. Nelson Brooks brought that insurance. Mr. George Wyman bought that insurance. So she went back to show the entire community that it worked. It worked. That's the characteristics of the people in Royal who held on to the land. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks a million. It was a great talk. I know that I'm from St. Paul. I'm from Minneapolis, but there's a freeway interstate going from Minneapolis to St. Paul, Interstate 94. And the same thing that Ms. Steele was talking about happened to the Rondo neighborhood. It's gone. And so this is important. Heritage, history, people are important. Let's do what we can.
Can you post her email so we can send an email?
Yes.
Young artists at AOL.com.
Post it.
Young artists, and artists is always plural with us, at AOL.com.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
And we'll post that on Buzz and on Facebook and on our website.
Okay, great.
Can you please mention the tour of Royal? My husband and I have been, and it's an amazing thing, but there's a lot of new folks here who haven't. So this is something all of us that are interested in Royal need to do.
Of course, when the pandemic came, I had to close down the tours. And I'm just getting to a point where I will start them again. So Ann Chamona over here is, will take your email address and I will set the tours. Probably won't start them until January because of what we have on the calendar to do. I had part-time staff before the pandemic, and I'm without staff now. So that's why I said we will probably start them after the beginning of the year. We're doing a lot of things online, including the tour. If you go to our website, Young Performing Artists, remember the artist is always plural with us, .org, you will see, you can view the tour online. It's $7 to see the tour, but there, if you click on the blog, there are some very interesting stories about the people that live. That story I told you about my mom and the Lily White childhood birth there. And I didn't finish the story. My grandfather didn't know who he was getting. I don't know who he thought he was getting, but he got me. But he had some cousins that lived in Tampa, and they owned the business. So I got my first limo ride when I was a baby coming back to Royal, a month after, they kept them a month or so at that time, after I was born. Well, don't be so jealous. because my grandfather's cousins owned a funeral home, so my grandmother was a white purse. So Beverly still was born on the Lily White insurance at the Lily White Hospital, and she was brought back to Royal in a white purse. And that's my story, and I'll stick to it.
Thank you very much. I don't normally do this. I normally don't wear a hat during this presentation, but yesterday being Veterans Day, I do want to honor all the veterans. We've got open board positions. If any of you are looking to make a difference and just serve, and if you're interested, we've got multiple officer and director positions open. If you're interested, please contact any board member or Sue Blaylock's the lead for the nominating committee. Next slide, Rick. Also, we're looking for volunteers for any number of things that we need to do in the club. And we're looking for diverse skills. Don't feel like any of this cannot benefit, that what you do won't benefit the club. That's just not true. Everybody has, from your prior work experience, maybe you've managed projects, you've got some computer skills, you've worked in finance, PowerPoint website, anything like that, Facebook, updating. You don't have to be a webmaster, but we do have stuff where we need to update stuff and monitor certain things, because I know that some of us have been on Facebook. They say that, I know my nieces and nephews tell me that Facebook is so for old people. So apparently it is. And, but anyway, they would, it's a free-for-all out there, and it's a constant updating and stuff like that. So we appreciate that, anyone that wants to do stuff like that. So if you're interested in doing any kind of surveying, it doesn't have to be anything that's on the screen, it could be anything. Just, that I'd like to help out. It doesn't have to be full-time, it could be, if you're interested in someone to do this, if you need help with something, let us know. Also, Norm Davis has done the food pantry and the donations to the food shelves for 15 years. And Norm, he thinks he's done that long enough, and I keep trying to convince him that he hasn't, but it's not working real well. He isn't buying what I'm selling. So anyway, if any of you are interested in taking over some of those responsibilities, that's a noble cause to give to the less fortunate. So thanks for that. Next slide, Rick. During the last election, it was quite chaotic, as you know. Thanks to all the poll watchers, poll observers, boiler room staff, rovers, ballot carriers, and sign delivery people that helped out. Monumental effort. Thanks to Sumter, Marion, and Lake County DECs for the work they did. Eric Lipsitz had set up all the coordination for all the boiler room staff, the poll observers, that kind of stuff. So thanks, Eric, for doing that. And with that also, there was Sumter County had the best turnout for voting in the state for our council. So thanks for the Sumter DEC for that. And with that, next slide, please. So, Chris, if you want to say a word or two, are you good with letting me just talk?
About what we did?
Yep, whatever you like.
So the record that Sumter County got this year in the primary and also in the general was to have the highest voter turnout for Democrats of all 97 counties. And that didn't happen without a lot of people that behind the scenes work to try to get people registered, get people to vote by mail, get people informed about the election and what was at stake. I wish other counties had done what we had done and we'd have a different outcome. But going forward, we know what works and we just need to keep building on it. So thanks to all of you who are here, who are on Zoom, and your neighbors for all that you did. I've passed out, I'll just take this minute, everything we do takes money. We don't get a free office, the Republicans do. Everything we do, everything we print, we pay for. So I'll be at the door with a handout of a couple of fundraisers. We're having the cat contest, just like the dog contest last year for the calendar, and the honey baked ham. If you use our link, we get 20% if you buy a gift card. We will have a gala coming up in March, which we'll find out more information about as we come forward. So we've got a lot going on, but again, we need to keep going forward because we can try to stay. Thanks.
And from Lake, here's Luann.
Hello. I would like to just echo, I think that the volunteers that we had in Lake County that helped with voter protection and turn out the vote did an excellent job. Of course, unfortunately, there are more Republicans in our county and they had a good turnout too. So I really want to thank everybody that worked on the campaign. And even, you know, depending on what people did, voting was an important thing. So even people who weren't able to do phone banking or something like that, please keep in mind that we'll be looking for volunteers as time goes on because we've got to build a better system for the next 2 years. So we really have to get that work done. It's very, very important. We're looking for people to be neighborhood coordinators and hand out material, neighborhood phone banking, voter protection, you name it, we're looking for it. So, because the more volunteers we have, the less anybody particularly has to do. You can work in pairs, you can do things like that. Whereas if we only have a few, it makes it a big burden on everybody. But I want to thank everybody. It was really, the Lake County Villages Precinct had good turnout. I don't have the final numbers. I don't think we were as good as Sumter, but we traveled along. One other plug that I would like to ask every single person in here, in January, go on your Supervisor of Elections website and sign up again for vote by mail. Because none of us, none, will have vote by mail starting in January. So the first big push that we're going to have is getting that vote by mail started again. So just keep that in mind. Talk to your neighbors, and thank you very much.
Okay. Holiday party is this coming Friday. If you haven't signed up and you would like to go and talk to Sue Blaylock over in the corner, stand up, Sue, please. And what's that?
I sold 5 tickets today. I think we're sold out. Put you on a waiting list.
Okay, very good. And is Ash here? Okay. Ash, you fought the good fight. And since, let me go back on stage. Since President Biden did such a good job.
Yes, he did.
So, anyway, it was, it didn't turn out the way we hoped down here, but you know what? It's, there's a next time. You know, Florida didn't turn out the way we hoped, but you know what? The country did very well. And thanks for the African American Club for visiting. We appreciate it. We've, it's always, I won't say it's difficult, but you know, there's a lot of clubs around the villages, and even in the villages that we need that I vow to do better at reaching out and connecting with everybody, because we're family. So with that, next slide, please, Rick. We will see you next month, December 3rd.
Next month we'll have to set